G'day everyone, welcome back to my recap video of episode 11 of Australian Survivor, and overall we've had another pretty cruisy episode in the end, with Rachel being voted out this time again in the Brains tribe losing yet another immunity challenge. But we did see at the start of this episode that fishing looks like their new way to attempt to create social bonds and form strategies, with Rachel trying to reel in Kara, no pun intended, at the Brains camp, and also Hayley pulling in Danny at the Brawn camp. Now, focusing in on Hayley's interactions, she again firstly did a fantastic job of just taking in little pieces of information about people she didn't know about, asking about Kez and Gerald and trying to get some information prior to meeting them at the merge. But more importantly, she read the situation with Danny absolutely beautifully and did a really risky play in asking what she thought was the time to make a move against Simon. Now yes, this is insanely risky, with Danny obviously being extremely close to Simon throughout the game. But again, Hayley made this read absolutely perfectly, in knowing Danny was a player, and also phrased it in a way that wasn't too obvious. It wasn't like, I want Simon out at the next vote or anything like that. She was merely just asking the question, hey, have you thought about making a move against Simon? Danny then revealed some of her cards, explaining she's deliberately aligning with the alphas and would be keen to make a blindside or a Sandra Bullock on Simon when the time was right, and very happy to bring Hayley in on this plan as well. This is again potentially, as I mentioned last recap, setting up for a huge double idol blindside on Simon. Now I'm probably going to jump the gun a little bit here, and I don't want to do it, but I think I'm going to have to. But each episode, even though we're only seeing small quantities of Hayley within Brawn continually winning, but to me she's without question the star of this season. She's playing an unbelievable game, and if she keeps going this way and wins this season, which I think she's going to, she could rival David Gennett as taking over the throne as the best Australian Survivor player we have seen so far. Yes, an absolutely huge call to make, but one I'm pretty comfortable saying at the moment. And as you hear from me most recaps, I really think she's a phenomenal player and playing an unbelievable and near perfect game at this stage. Anyway, moving on from that, we did not get a reward this episode, with both tribes being granted the reward of love in the form of a letter from home. Yes, the second time we have seen families this season, and I doubt it will be the last. But maybe they're adding a couple of more family-based rewards this season, as they probably aren't actually able to fly families out into the game due to the COVID restrictions. So they're involving them in the form of letters and photos and rewards throughout the game a little bit more. It was pretty cool to see guys like Emmett and Baden get emotional and take it all in, and it's evidence of how tolling this game is on players, not just physically but also mentally. So after everyone read through their letters, back at the Brains camp, Gerald and Emmett are talking about numbers coming into merge, and Gerald brings up a really good point, that based on his observations, if the other tribe loses a challenge, an original Brawn is almost definitely going to go home, which is not good for their numbers later in the game if they want to stay Brawn strong. Now this was a really strong and accurate read by Gerald, and Emmett agrees and thinks it could be a good time to throw a challenge to ensure their numbers stay on their side, with the easy pickings in Laura and Rachel at their camp. Now obviously it's always risky throwing a challenge, but they do feel pretty confident in their position they're in. Now when we got to the immunity challenge, well, if we can even call it a challenge, it was barely a challenge at all, with the Brawn tribe absolutely decimating the Brains. Probably the most lopsided challenge I've ever seen. I mean, I don't think they really even properly threw this challenge, and even if they tried their absolute hardest, they were definitely going to lose to the Brawns regardless. They were just so dominant and they were never getting beaten. It was almost giving me old Brain Tribe vibes from Survivor Cagayan in how bad they were at this challenge. They were really absolutely terrible. So obviously the Brains lose the challenge yet again, and Emmett is absolutely stoked, and his plan is falling into place to take out Rachel. So George comes up with the idea of a split vote again, with the boys voting on Rachel and the girls voting on Laura. So it's a 3 versus 2 split, so no matter who Rachel and Laura vote for, it does not matter. They can re-vote if an idol is played and one of them is guaranteed to go home. Now Rachel is not having a bar of this plan, and she tries to bring all the original Brains back together after realizing she's been playing a little bit too emotionally in continually targeting Kara and George this whole time. As I mentioned in the last recap, she had all the information last episode from Emmett to go to them then, last tribal, to form an all Brains majority, but she did not do it because they were too dead set on voting for Kara. But she's put her emotions aside and now she has realised she can bring all the brains back together and it really is the best move she can make. And I agree, this is basically the only play Rachel and Laura have at this point in time. However, the way she's pitching it to George, she constantly states, the reason we're all here is to make big moves. We came here to make big moves. And I'm honestly not a really big fan of this pitch, as I don't really think it's true. At least it wouldn't be for me anyway. As much as big moves are fun and they're exciting, making them for the sake of making them is not the way to play Survivor. Making the right move for you personally to get to the end and get the votes from the jury is the way to correctly play Survivor. So I much prefer pitches that appeal to the person that you're speaking to. So rather than big move this, big move that, she should have more so aligned with, look George, I personally believe that this is the best move for you and the longevity of your game. I really think her best pitch would have been, if you don't come over with us and go brain strong tonight, you are putting yourself in jeopardy, George, as the Brawn next tribal can pull in Laura, and you and Cara will then be on the bottom as it is the better numbers for them long term. But honestly, it was a really hard one to make when they were butting heads so much earlier in the season. But with the pitch that Rachel ended up making, George on the other hand seemed to see this was actually going to be coming already, and seemed to be 2 steps ahead of this pitch, already setting up this split vote so he had all the power in this tribal. He deliberately made the guys have 3 of the 5 votes, so he could personally potentially switch his vote over with Laura and Rachel if he felt he needed to, and he didn't need Cara's vote in order to do so. So everything in the end came down to George's vote and what he thought was best for his game. George to me has this classic Survivor trajectory of a massive Survivor superfan that plays too hard too early. They realise this, and then you let them gain momentum when you should have taken them out earlier in the game. Kind of like a David Wright in Millennials vs Gen X. Played too hard too early at the start of the game. He cooled his jets as the game went on, and then he became really difficult to get out the further the game went on. So whilst George's decision to take out Rachel was probably locked and loaded in his mind, he did know he had the ability to vote out whoever he really wanted at this tribal, and that alone is a fantastic observation to have if things end up going haywire at Tribal Council. However, at Tribal Council it was pretty clear cut in the end, and I specifically really liked the way Gerald spoke to George and Cara. Emmett was more playing along the lines of, look, we're going to bring you guys to merge in our 5 and then we'll see what happens. Whilst Gerald was like, nah, we're going to bring you to merge and then you guys are going to be an integral part of our plan once we get to merge. Which, as mentioned before, is really playing up into that what's best for the person you're speaking to, rather than what's best for you to sway their vote. George in the end though did not sway and stayed with the Brawns as Rachel was taken out of this game. But was this the right move for George to make? I don't really think it would have mattered too much in the end for him either way. However, I did personally view Laura and Rachel as very obtainable long-term votes. They literally only have each other and no one else. No other alliance member at all in the entire game. So I did see it as a really good opportunity to switch sides, pull in their votes, and then potentially go brain strong come merge. So Laura now seems completely on the outs and probably in some trouble if this tribe lose again next episode. But again, she is a vote that is completely up for grabs and will cling on to anyone that wants her. So I really see her as a great opportunity to pull in as a number. But now with the numbers, it's a little bit more difficult to do so than the previous Tribal Council in a 5 versus 1 split. But that is as mentioned, unless the 3 Brawn take her in, and then put Cara and George on the bottom. So I do worry for Laura and her position in the game, but this is Survivor and far more stranger things have happened. But we're 2 episodes down this week, and they were 2 very casual Survivor episodes, especially for Australian Survivor. So I'm sure it's going to get a little bit spicy tonight, so make sure to stay tuned. And I'll be bringing in another recap tomorrow to round out the week. Thanks to all for watching, staying invested, and supporting the channel. This is Analytical Strategy signing out once again, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.